I do not think it's a traditional kidnap for ransom. They're not demonstrating any of the things that are normally associated with people that are in the kidnapping business to make money. And I think it's the media attention. But you have to go into it that there are evil people out there that will do terrible things to wonderful human beings.
I don't think she was kidnapped. We would have heard, listen, there would have been a video, there would have been a photograph, there would have been something, a lock of hair, a drop of blood, something mailed to somebody so they could verify, yes, in fact, these people have my mother.
One specific fact here will haunt you once heard. It's not the porch blood. We'll get to that. Not the hooded figure with a weapon and bag. We'll cover those ransom notes sent to a tabloid too. This one detail flips the entire script. Top investigators have been hinting at this for weeks. Since Nancy Guthrie vanished over 60 days ago, not once, not even once. No photos, no audio or letters have proven Nancy Guthrie is alive. Never once. You were led to believe this was an abduction. The authorities handled the investigation as a kidnapping. Every news outlet and phone alert framed it that way. Yet, a veteran agent doubts it was a botched robbery. Then she added something far more important that the public completely overlooked. She thinks this happened because of Savannah Guthrie's actions. I won't reveal what that implies just yet. To grasp the weight of it, truly, you must follow the chilling logic that led her there. I'll reveal what a top analyst told the press, a man who spent his career leading anti-terror for the NYPD as a deputy commissioner. He suggested the case was reframed after a tragic accident. Two separate experts, two different methods, one unspoken conclusion they are circling. Nancy Guthrie might never have been abducted. Let's go. Before we talk theories, you need the timeline, not the TV version, the real one. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. Her daughter is Savannah Guthrie, the morning show host since 2012, one of the most famous journalists in the country. Nancy lives in the Catalina foothills outside Tucson, Arizona. There are few cameras and little traffic at night. Local laws even restrict how much outdoor lighting residents use. Standard smart doorbells aren't designed to yield high-definition imagery in pitch-black settings like that. During the night of January 31st, Nancy joined her daughter Annie for a weekend family meal on Saturday evening. Since she used a rideshare to get there, detectives located and questioned the driver. A relative drove her back, letting her off at her residence at 9:48 that night. The garage opened up, then shut again exactly 2 minutes later. Nancy was safely indoors, though she struggled to get around easily. Dealing with severe heart issues, she relied on a pacemaker and daily meds while living by herself. Keep that medical implant in mind, as it becomes the most crucial piece of evidence in the whole mystery. Deep into the night, as January shifted into the small hours of February 1st, the situation at the house took a turn. The front door camera cut out at 1:47 a.m., and it wasn't just some random connection error. Someone actually ripped the device off the wall. But video clips were later pulled from deep system remnants by federal agents and tech experts. Since Nancy lacked a paid cloud plan, no real-time saving occurred, forcing investigators to dig through hidden internal logs. The recovered frames reveal a person in a mask on the steps, wearing a balaclava, with gloves sealed under sleeves and trousers covering their footwear completely. Crime scene experts pointed out the outfit was clearly intended to leave zero forensic trail behind. Right before the feed died, the intruder is caught shielding the lens with a shrub yanked from the garden. That wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment choice. It was calculated, suggesting a person who had scouted the layout beforehand, aware of the security setup, and knowing they had to disable it before proceeding. Come 2:12 a.m., nearly half an hour after the blackout, a separate security sensor picked up some movement. However, no actual video exists because the lack of a subscription prevented any recording. Sheriff Chris Nanos highlighted a specific point in a public statement that most people overlooked. He mentioned that the activity spotted at 2:12 in the morning might have been a human, or perhaps just a stray animal. Without a visual record, identifying what tripped the alarm is impossible. That unanswered question remains a massive, lingering hole in the middle of the investigation. At 2:28 a.m., 16 minutes later, the sync between Nancy's heart monitor app and her smartphone failed. That hardware usually sent her heart rate info over Bluetooth to her mobile, which then forwarded the health stats to her doctors. The sudden silence at 2:28 implies one of two grim scenarios. Either Nancy was dragged out of the short 10 to 15-foot Bluetooth range, causing a disconnect, or her own heart simply stopped. Regardless, the limitations of the tech provide a definitive window. The events inside were over by 2:28 a.m., as her phone was discovered still in the house. Detectives verified that fact. Out of options, the authorities resorted to an advanced tool dubbed a signal sniffer. They attached a sensor to a chopper to hunt for the faint Bluetooth pings the implant sends out every few minutes. Regardless of whether the phone is nearby, that medical device has over half a decade of power left in it. Somewhere out there, it might still be broadcasting a signal. An ex-NSA security expert who built the sniffing tech told reporters they tried scanning the entire search zone. One, George Mason cybersecurity expert, equated the search to using a microscope to find a tiny speck in a yard. You must be in the exact spot at the perfect moment. She remains lost today. Nancy went missing on February 1st after skipping her weekly online church meeting. Relatives checked in at 11:56. They dialed 911 7 minutes later. Police stood on her front porch within 12 minutes. DNA tests confirmed the blood found there belonged to Nancy Guthrie. Weeks later, that detail became just another point in the daily briefings. But it is no footnote. A woman's blood on her own porch in the dark. Midnight is where the story begins. And that is the story for today. Consider one simple question. If you held a live person for profit, who would you reach out to? It is obvious. You contact the family quietly. You build a link. You provide a contact method, proof of life, and a way to pay. You stay hidden because being seen is your biggest threat. Your leverage vanishes the second the police move in. That is how hostage ransoms usually work. This is documented worldwide, where abduction is treated like a business. That did not happen here. The first demand went to TMZ. Messages also hit two Tucson stations, KGUN and KVOA. Not to her family or through private links, but publicly to the media. The note asked for $6 million in Bitcoin. It gave a February 9th deadline and mentioned Nancy's smartwatch. These facts suggested the sender knew the interior of the home. The message warned that no further contact would be made. It claimed that the police were unable to help. Crucially, the family had no way to send a reply. No email, no phone, and no meeting spot for the exchange. Commander Daniel O'Shea is a former Navy SEAL. He led the hostage group at the Iraq Embassy from 2004. He dealt with over 400 kidnapping cases personally. By his departure, regional abductions had dropped to near zero. O'Shea saw the red flags in this case immediately. He said contacting TMZ is not how professionals handle a hostage. Pros always start by quietly talking to those most likely to pay. They begin with a figure. $6 million for a high-profile American target is a standard request. But then you negotiate because the goal is the actual payment. This group never talked. The first deadline came and went. A following message arrived. It offered no deal, instead reacting to the family's online videos. No proof she was alive, just silence. O'Shea was blunt. He doubts the note writers or even the ones who took her. He thinks this was a media stunt meant for headlines, not money. He mentioned how those Epstein records, that massive data dump drowning out every other headline right before Nancy vanished, simply vanished from the public eye the second this new drama unfolded. If you send a demand for money without a way to reply, it isn't a ransom note, it is a manifesto. And a manifesto represents a completely unique form of outreach coming from a very specific type of individual. Okay, look, typical kidnapping for cash just doesn't operate that way. These global abduction rings treat their crimes like a business where the victim is the merchandise. They secure their asset and do everything to keep that person safe while trying to prove to the person holding the purse strings that they actually have the individual you're searching for. They want to open a dialogue and start with a massive asking price. The fact that there has been zero verified evidence she is alive, or even a fake digital version which would at least show an effort to play the part, makes me doubt if the faction holding her now is the same crew that originally carried out the snatching. They might have a link, but I suspect this is just theater, designed to keep this story trending in the headlines. Why do that? We have to look at the real goals. Profit might not be the point here. I honestly don't think they are after a payout. It looks like they want to hijack the news cycle, using this case to bury other scandals. Which raises the question, Why pick Samantha Guthrie? This doesn't feel like your everyday snatch and grab for a payday. They aren't following any of the standard protocols, usually seen when professional criminals are trying to squeeze someone for money. I am convinced it is all about the media spotlight. You have to realize there are truly monstrous people out there who prey on the innocent. Honestly, this is a grim perspective, but it comes from years in the field. Anyone cruel enough to target an 84-year-old woman really changes my theory. A week ago, I was considering a cartel connection because of the proximity to the Arizona border with Mexico. I know those syndicates have zero hesitation when it comes to abduction. They are more ruthless than Al-Qaeda and operate the largest kidnapping networks on Earth. The FARC used to be the main players. I wondered if there was a tie to them, or rather, to the Mexican gangs, since they are so prone to extreme violence. They have kidnapped and executed young influencers in Mexico without a second thought. So, they are definitely capable of this. But I always went back to the same advice I gave ambassadors when their citizens were taken. I would always be extremely direct and tell them they had to work from the assumption that their people, taken by groups claiming to be Al-Qaeda or whoever, were never coming home. That has to be your starting point. Since this group hasn't provided any proof of life, I really think they just want the cameras rolling. So, multiple time limits have expired with no results. Let's revisit the blood evidence, because that is where the logic of this case falls apart, or holds together. Re-examining the biological evidence is vital, as those forensic traces represent the exact point where this entire theory stands or falls. A reporting team from News Nation spotted clear bloodstains across the entryway and path, even though police had already handed the property back to the family members. Sheriff Chris Nanos went public with the news, and lab results proved it belonged to Nancy. The digital team at Fox News caught those specific stains on camera. Dr. Michael Baden, a legend in the world of American forensic science, reviewed the evidence. A man whose expert opinions have influenced many of the nation's most high-profile murder trials. Looking at the photos, he noticed a unique pattern in how the blood landed. They were tiny specks with hollowed-out middles, what experts call donut spatter. He noted that this specific look usually comes from blood dripping out of the nose or mouth. There is a biological reason for this. Blood from those spots catches air as it falls, leaving a distinct gap right in the center. According to him, Nancy Guthrie was definitely wounded, likely on her face or hands. He was blunt. These are not just random marks. Given the geometry, the volume, and exactly where they were found on the deck, they scream kidnapping in progress. Entirely consistent. Those were his exact clinical words. He is a man who chooses his vocabulary with extreme care. Just sit with that visual for a second. The porch, the specific blood drops signaling a facial injury, and that 41-minute gap starting at 1:47. Someone in a mask showed up ready, covered head to toe to avoid leaving any DNA behind, carrying a 25-liter Ozark Trail rucksack. This wasn't a laptop bag or a duffel for cash. It was a rugged hiking pack, the kind of gear meant for a long haul, big enough to hold zip ties, tools, or even heavy weight if they needed it. FBI profilers think the suspect is a man, around 5'9" to 5'10", with an ordinary build. Yet, no car was ever spotted on local security cameras leaving during that window. Detectives went door to door for 2 miles, begging neighbors to scan every bit of footage from the start of January through February 2nd. Still, not a single video shows a suspicious vehicle, which leaves us with the mystery that still haunts this whole case. Did the kidnapper just walk away? Did they have a getaway driver who knew exactly how to dodge every lens in the area? Or did things get messy so fast right there on the porch, during those 41 minutes, that the original plan just fell apart? That last theory is the one we need to focus on. Enter Tracy Walder. She isn't just some talking head on TV. She was a special agent for the FBI and a longtime CIA officer, working counter-terror in 9 different nations across the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, earning top honors from various global intelligence agencies. She spent her whole career mastering one thing, figuring out how violent criminals plot out hits meant to scare and dominate their victims. After looking at the details, she was absolute about one thing: this was never just a botched break-in. So, why does that matter? Because back in the middle of February, One local Arizona outlet, citing an anonymous tip, reported that the feds were actually leaning toward that exact scenario. A home invasion that spiraled out of control. Within a few hours, the Pima County Sheriff's Office shut those rumors down. They officially stated they never characterized the incident as a botched robbery. Claiming anything else is just plain wrong. A sentiment the feds backed up completely. Sheriff Nanos made it clear that leak wasn't theirs. Yet Walder's doubt about a robbery isn't based on bureaucracy. It comes down to pure tactical common sense. Thieves don't drag people along. She pointed out that the reasoning is incredibly straightforward. A crook wants stuff. Slip in, grab the loot, and vanish. Abducting someone, particularly an 84-year-old woman who struggles to move, completely flips the mission on its head. It kills your speed and makes way too much noise. You're trading a minor theft charge for a lifetime in federal prison on a kidnapping count. Professional criminals don't accidentally make that trade. Then, she highlighted that 25-liter backpack. When you're out to boost laptops or gems, you bring a bag suited for the job. You don't gear up with a trail pack meant for marathon excursions. That's for when your objective demands extra room, serious volume, and the power to haul a heavy load. Her take was chilling. 4 words that meant more than any other public statement so far. This was too deliberate. Here's her reasoning. Detectives grilled neighbors about video from January 11th, 3 weeks before she vanished. An informant told Fox News Digital that a specific doorbell clip from the feds wasn't actually filmed on the same day as the rest, implying the guy in the mask had scoped out the place before Nancy disappeared. The Pima County Sheriff's Department questioned the exact timing of that footage, though they did admit the shared photos. Catch the guy in various outfits, switching between wearing the pack and going without it, and that the feds wanted video going back to New Year's Day. The place was definitely being watched. The daily routine of that home had been meticulously mapped out. Somebody put in the prep work long before the strike. This wasn't some random chance. This was a calculated operation. Tracy Walder narrowed it down to 2 specific types of perpetrators that match the crime's design. Telling those 2 apart completely shifts your perspective on the entire event. Case 1. A total fixation. An unhealthy interest that brewed for a while before turning violent. It wasn't about hating Savannah Guthrie. It was a twisted, one-sided bond that made her loved ones a bullseye. Experts in crime label these parasocial relationships, those deep, one-sided psychological ties, where a fan grows obsessed with a celebrity who has no idea they even exist. Most of the time they're benign, but the data shows they can occasionally, and predictably, turn dark. When things take a turn for the worse, it's rarely the actual celebrity who ends up in the crosshairs. It's usually an easier target close to them, somebody with a reachable home, a predictable schedule, and far less security around them. Savannah Guthrie has stayed among the most prominent faces in American news since 2012. She has fronted national presidential debates. Her work includes interviewing Epstein's accusers, like Virginia Giuffre. She's reported on the most intense political scandals of the past 10 years, while constantly sharing her deep affection for her mother. Nancy's Today Show cameos made her a staple of Savannah's world. Her home address was no mystery. The second theory suggests vengeance. Someone feeling slighted by Savannah, either at work or personally, choosing to strike where she's most vulnerable. The person she can't protect. Criminal behavior experts label this pattern as proxy violence. The actual target is the celebrity figure. The suffering is inflicted upon a loved one known to the offender. It involves someone defenseless. Hurting a mother communicates a distinct threat. It implies, "I found your most precious person before you could protect them," Walder remarked. She suspects the perpetrator was either obsessed with or resentful toward Savannah. If that's the framework of the crime, if the motive ties to Savannah, those media ransom letters weren't seeking cash. They were about dominance, forcing Savannah to witness, turning a reporter into the actual headline, exposed and unable to manage the situation for once. This wasn't a transaction. It was a statement, intentional, private, and funneled through her most beloved person. I'll now introduce our next specialist who offered the best insight into that night. John Miller leads CNN's law enforcement and security analysis. Before joining CNN, he served as the NYPD's Deputy Commissioner for Counterterrorism and Intelligence, managing the Intelligence Division and working closely with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He previously held leadership roles within the FBI and National Intelligence Office. His media career earned him 2 Peabody Awards and multiple Emmys. He's among the few individuals in the country who have reached the peak of both investigative reporting and federal policing. 1 month into the investigation, Miller released a thorough tactical analysis. In that piece, he made what I consider the most vital observation regarding this case. Here is exactly how he phrased it. We must consider that this began as a pre-planned break-in that went totally wrong and was rebranded as a kidnapping as events changed. Let's examine that statement because every single term carries weight. Calculated home entry, not a theft. A targeted intrusion. A crime targeting the residence and the person inside. The victim was always the objective. Someone to be controlled until things spiraled. Not slightly or partially, totally. Whatever that intruder in the mask intended to do at Nancy Guthrie's place on the night of January 31st, it fell apart the moment they stepped onto that front porch. Overhauled. That is the single word that changes our entire perspective. This whole crime was reframed after the fact. The final narrative, the letters, the Bitcoin address, the media blitz, wasn't what they had originally planned. Someone had to wing it on the fly. Someone stood amidst the wreckage of what happened and made a high-stakes call on how to spin it, how to bury the truth, because their original options had suddenly evaporated. Their initial mission was no longer on the table. Survival now required a complete departure from the script they had prepared. And then Miller pointed this out. The blood outside the entrance is the smoking gun, proving that no matter the intent, things turned south instantly. That blood is the one constant, the anchor of the whole case. Everything else, those letters, the demands, the silence, the disappearance, must be viewed through the lens of those 40 minutes on the porch. Whatever the plot was, it died right there. Consider the massive implications for every single thing that followed. Why send ransom notes to TMZ and news stations instead of the actual family? Because the author wasn't in a position to negotiate a deal. They were acting out of pure, unadulterated panic. They were crafting a narrative to mask a reality that had already taken place. Why did the messages stop so abruptly after that second note? Because there was never going to be a bargain. Those notes weren't the plan. They were the cover story written after the collapse. Why was there no proof of life? Miller put that question directly on the record. Could someone fake a kidnapping to hide a violent home invasion where the victim was gravely hurt? A desperate attempt to salvage a disaster. The mission failed, and those letters were a frantic try to turn a catastrophe into a trade, giving the police a living hostage to chase instead of facing what really transpired on that porch during those 41 unaccounted minutes. There is another disturbing factor that we cannot overlook. A source within the department spoke to News Nation off the record, claiming the Puma County Sheriff's team on this case lacked seasoned homicide investigators. The person leading the unit, according to this insider, had zero experience with murder cases before taking the helm. Early mistakes by officers who initially assumed. An elderly woman had simply wandered off, ruined the chance of securing the scene. Those are hours that can never be recovered. Evidence gets contaminated. The window for forensic proof slams shut forever. The FBI has moved its base from Tucson to Phoenix, a move John Miller addressed openly. He insisted this is anything but a cold case. This shift marks the move from immediate crisis mode to deep dive investigative work. Detectives are still chasing down leads that haven't dried up yet. He confirmed the family's $1 million reward was strategically held back, dropped right when it would spark the best leads, just as the first wave of media frenzy started dying down. This move was a calculated choice, planned out by both the relatives and the police. Genetic evidence remains the best bet for the future. Detectives are digging into family trees and ancestry data, using the exact tech that nailed the suspect in the Idaho University slayings. The killer might not be on file, but maybe a second cousin or some far-off relative is. Tracking that down isn't fast. We are talking months, but it has cracked cases that seemed impossible. A pair of guys were hauled in for a bit of interrogation early on. Police pulled one over near Tucson and grilled him for half a day, then let him walk free. The authorities have zero hold on him now. Neither man has been officially labeled a person of interest yet. Local sheriffs have stated that every single one of Nancy's closest relatives, like brothers, sisters, and their partners, are totally off the hook. Let us connect the dots. You probably started this knowing only the basics. You heard she vanished, the gore, the letters, that creepy mask, and then nothing. My goal today was to break down what 3 top-tier experts are really signaling when you listen closely to their insight, stacking their claims against the actual crime scene facts, while ignoring the abduction story that the news has been obsessed with since the beginning. Consider Tracy Walder, a veteran from the CIA and FBI, who argues this hit was way too focused to be some fluke. This was no random break-in or crime of chance. A person with inside info on Savannah's life picked this home and this victim on purpose, likely after stalking them for weeks, driven by some sick fixation or what experts would call a cold-blooded act of revenge. Then there is John Miller, a high-level NYPD and FBI veteran who believes the bloodstains tell the real story. The mess suggests things spiraled out of control before the attacker could finish their original scheme. Everything that came later, those letters and ransom calls, were likely just a smokescreen to hide the reality of her fate. Take Commander Daniel O'Shea, an ex-Navy SEAL, who used to run the hostage rescue team at the American Embassy in Iraq. Having handled over 400 cases, he says this looks nothing like a typical kidnapping for cash. There is no secret contact, no evidence she is alive, no real bargaining, and they are writing to reporters rather than the victims. He warns against handing over money because he suspects the people behind the notes do not even have her anymore. Nobody is officially saying she is gone. Neither am I. Let me be clear about that, because we cannot forget the real people here: Savannah, Cameron, and Annie, who pleaded for help on TV and gave up everything, still holding out hope. Here is the bottom line. The old idea that she was snatched for a payday has basically been tossed out by the pros behind the scenes. The new perspective is much darker, beginning with the tough question Tracy Walder finally voiced. What kind of grudge leads a person to strike at Savannah Guthrie's own mother? Right now, we simply do not have an official explanation. However, if the forensic testing is progressing as John Miller has indicated, if ancestral tracing is underway, and if detectives are still pursuing those confidential leads behind the scenes, we might be closer to the truth than realized. Nancy Guthrie's family needs closure. They deserve the truth. And that figure lurking on the doorstep at 1:47 a.m., armed and ready, is still being hunted down. If you have any information, no matter how minor it seems, reach the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You will find that number below. Don't hesitate to call. If this analysis shed light on the investigation, hit subscribe and ring the bell. The search continues daily. I will report on every major update since this mystery remains unsolved, and we are still here. As the investigation stands today, the truth feels closer than ever, yet still just out of reach. Every piece of evidence uncovered has only deepened the mystery, revealing a story far more complex and unsettling than anyone first imagined. Detectives continue to chase leads, refusing to let the silence win, while those affected wait for answers that never seem to come fast enough. There's a growing sense that something critical is about to surface, something that could change everything. Until then, the search goes on, driven by one relentless goal: to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it's been buried.